so that Jacob can teach next week. Can we close the back doors? Because it's like a lot of noise. Okay. So just this week, I wanted to go over a few things. Israel tried to let in humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, and does anybody know how that resulted? Okay, when they sent in this truck with food, there was a stampede around this, and basically several people were killed. I think up to 7 were killed. Hamas would not turn over the bodies or anything like that as proof. They said, we got them in our hospital. They blamed the Israelis. It went to the United Nations Security Council. Every nation voted against Israel except the United States. And we voted against it, so to condemn them. So it's just amazing to me how like everything Hamas does to itself gets blamed on Israel, and then the international community goes against them. So we're looking at here again are the many tunnels that are under Gaza, 450 miles, and that was paid for with humanitarian aid to the nation. They went 14 miles into Israel, which is a huge extent. Last time, I think we covered this already. I'm gonna try to go past it. All the tunnels that were built underneath it. And Iran is constantly trying to get more supplies through Syria into Lebanon to strike at Israel. So tell me a little bit about Hezbollah. What do you know about it? Anybody? Right. It's a completely Iranian-backed organization. It was chartered in 1985 to get rid of Israel and the Jews. So it's Iran's arm, and it's funded, and it's in Lebanon, but it's to hit Israel constantly. So that's very good. Also, officials who spoke to CBS did not give an exact timeline, and this was when the Tower 22 was attacked, and this is what brought on United States getting involved, was because 3 of our people who were engineers were all killed at this location in Jordan, which is pretty unbelievable, by a drone strike from Iran. So just yesterday, another super tanker was sunk outside of the Red Sea, and the Houthis are basically saying we're going to continue to do this. So this giant cargo ship was one of the other ones that was hit by a Houthi missile attack, and they're being supplied by whom? Iran, exactly. So they're in Yemen, and they're in the perfect position to hit anything coming in and out of the Middle East. So during this war, it's just incredible. This is the 3 soldiers I was telling you about who got killed. They were from Fort Monroe, Georgia, and they were all engineers. So this was talking last time we watched this video about all the chess pieces and how they're involved between Yemen and Iran, Syria, and Lebanon. I'll try to go past this one, I think. Yes?
Joe, is there any strategy in the shipping stuff that's happening with the Houthis? Like, obviously the world community is kind of backing the wrong side, right? They're backing Iran and saying that everything that's happening is fine, but if there's no strategy to it, then their own commercial enterprises on those ships are getting, right? Because that's a problem, that the shipping isn't getting through. They're having to go around the south side of Africa. So
it's huge. Are you talking about the Houthi strategy?
Yeah, like are they causing, like they're trying to stop the shipping going through,
Martha's
right?
going crazy right behind you. She really wants to answer this question. She gets 100 extra points today in class.
So they had sent out, the Houthis had sent out a thing saying they were banning any ship that was supporting Israel, UK, or US. So if any of these have anything to do with them, that's their target.
So, they're trying to punish them somehow, some way, if they can. So, this is the U.S. strikes Iran-backed militants in retaliation for what happened to the American troops. If you all want to skip this one, we can skip this one. This was when they had done all that. Yes, go ahead.
So the United States, we're allies with Israel, right?
With who?
Israel.
With Israel, yes.
Right, we back Israel, right?
Yes.
Okay, we should. Because
So we just did it at the National Security Council meeting in New York, where all the other countries voted against Israel with this convoy that came through to deliver humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip, and there was a stampede, and they blamed that on Israel. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Did you have another question? Okay. So for the sake of time, I'm going to skip this one. So I want to talk about this group a little bit, and I'm not going to read all of this, but basically the UNRWA was a Palestinian-backed organization for humanitarian aid for displaced Palestinians since 1948. What you do need to know about this organization is that they were found out, that they were involved, heavily involved, in the October 7th attack on Israel. They helped kidnap, they helped kill. And a lot of their people were involved. And because of this, there was a huge backlash in the press against this organization that had received humanitarian money from almost every country in Western Europe and in the United States and Canada. So they all said, no more, we're not going to give you any more money. And of course, the United Nations was screaming, was like, oh, this is so cruel, this is so wrong, you shouldn't do this to them, they're the humanitarian arm. And once again, any humanitarian aid sent to Palestine gets used for terrorism. And that's the lesson we've been learning over and over and over again. I'll skip this because it's mostly all regarding how they were involved and found out. So there was at least 12 workers that were in question. So I'll play this one real quick. I'm hoping it's not too long. It's no video sound.
The Hamas-Israel war, and I'm Yair Pinto, reporting to you from the depths of the Gaza Strip. The UN Watch organization published a new report revealing how UNRWA teachers in Gaza brainwash Palestinian children with the ideology of Hamas and promote terrorism and anti-Semitism. UNRWA is an organization created by the United Nations to deal only with Palestinian refugees and operates in all areas of life in Gaza. UNRWA is appointed by the United States of America, Germany, Great Britain, and the European Union. The report reveals that UNRWA teachers and other staff members who praised the Hamas massacre on the 7th of October on their social media accounts are hired to teach children inside Gaza. But this is the tip of the iceberg. It now turns out that some of the abductees who returned from captivity said that they were hidden in the homes of UNRWA agency workers. The IDF and Israel have accumulated evidence that UNRWA has been transferring some of its aid directly to Hamas since the beginning of this war. Yes, the humanitarian aid that entered the Gaza Strip for the sake of helping the poor Palestinian citizens was taken and used to help terrorists of Hamas. Even in the Hamas tunnel project, the IDF finds hard evidence of involvement of UNRWA officials. Israel is raising the level in its attempts to deal with this UN agency and to push it out of the Strip. The purpose of this aid organization is good but the forces of evil managed to do a lot of bad with it.
Okay, I'm not going to watch the rest of it for the sake of time, but come on now. Okay, so that bit is just incredible to me, and I've given you a couple passages about what's going to happen to several of these people involved. So the first big war that will happen down the road, but soon, is Psalms 83, which we've read before, Isaiah 63, Joel 3, Obadiah 1. They all go together, and it's, people always say, oh, it's the apocalypse. That is a separate war, or Armageddon. Those are separate wars. They have nothing to do with the initial war that will be around Israel. So two more passages that I would just wanted to bring to your attention is Ezekiel 25 and 35 about Edom. And Edom is whom, genetically? Modern day Jordan and part of Saudi Arabia, but who is there? Go ahead. Yep, Esau and Ishmael linked together. So let's go to Ezekiel chapter 35 and look at verses 1 through, well, let's read the whole thing really fast. Can I get a reader for that? And that's Ezekiel 35. You guys can split it up if you want to. Is it okay? Yeah. Okay.
Ezekiel 35. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. And say unto it, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out mine hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, and the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord God, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Sith thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Thus will I make Mount Seir most desolate, and cut off from it that passeth out, and him that returneth. And I will fill his mountains with his slain men in thy hills, and in thy valley, and in thy rivers shall they fall that are slain with the sword. And I will make thee perpetual desolations, and thy cities shall not return, and they shall know that I am the Lord.
Okay, so let's stop there. How do we know this hasn't happened yet? Anybody? Just look at the language in here. He says your cities are never going to be lived in again, and you're going to basically, the valleys and your ravines are going to be filled with your slain, so you're not going to exist as a people anymore. And God is doing this to Edom because why? Yes, Perry? Or go ahead, Randy.
Because when the Babylonians came against Israel, they said, raise them, destroy them, get rid of these guys.
They aided and abetted and helped the Babylonians in addition to their comments. So that they're nursing an ancient grudge. Did you have something else, Perry? Okay. So let's continue reading. I think we're at verse 10.
Because he said, These two nations, these two countries shall be mine, and we will take possession of them, although the Lord was there. Therefore, as I live, declares the Lord God, I will deal with you according to the anger and envy that you showed because of your hatred against them. And I will make myself known among them when I judge you, and you shall know that I am the Lord. I have heard all the revilings that you uttered against the mountains of Israel, saying, They are laid desolate, they are given us to devour. And you magnified yourselves against me with your mouth, and multiplied your words against me. I heard it. Thus says the Lord God, While the whole earth rejoices, I will make you desolate. As you rejoiced over the inheritance of the house of Israel, because it was desolate, so I will deal with you. You shall be desolate, Mount Seir and all of Edom, all of it. They will know that I am the Lord.
Right. So I would almost take their hatred at the time of the Babylonian captivity as a microcosm for all time, because they've done this over and over and over again. With the Romans, they've done it with everybody who's hated the Jews today. So it hasn't changed. And the three I would link together is Ezekiel 25, Ezekiel 35, and Obadiah 1. All three of those places, like there's 4 places that talk about Damascus being destroyed. One of them is Isaiah 17. So when you hear it in one place, you take notice. When it's said twice, you're like, okay, this is really serious. 3 or more times, you're like, this cannot be ignored. It might as well be carved in bedrock. So God is promising a day to reckon and to deal with all of this. And the thing is ratcheting up so much in the Middle East that it is going to affect the rest of the world. I keep wondering when the stock market's going to fall, because right now it just keeps soaring up and up and up, and I'm like, this is scary, because the world is on the precipice of a major change, and I don't know that we're ready for it. But anyway, going back to the Houthi rebels and the Suez Canal interrupting commerce, we've talked about it for a couple weeks. All the big navies, including Canada, the US, Great Britain, Australia, and others, are in there trying to clean up the situation. The Houthis have promised again this week they're going to do a major strike, so we'll see what happens. They did take down a ship just very recently. Did I play this video for you all? I don't think so. Okay. Can you turn the sound up on that one? Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Taking to the skies for airstrikes on Yemen. RAF Typhoon aircraft took off last night from their base in Cyprus. They were joined by a British refueling plane and by the US Air Force on a mission to destroy Houthi militia targets. A joint statement released with the images said the militaries of the United States and United Kingdom, with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands, and New Zealand, conducted an additional round of proportionate and necessary strikes against 36 Houthi targets across 13 locations in Yemen, in response to the Houthis' continued attacks against international and commercial shipping, as well as naval vessels transiting the Red Sea. And as video emerged claiming to show explosions on the ground in Yemen, the United States said they dropped 2,000-pound bombs on deeply buried weapons storage facilities, as well as drone and missile depots. This is, the UK Defence Secretary said, not an escalation. Maybe it's not intended to be, but it will be seen as one in a campaign of Western military action against Iranian militia across the region. Far to the north, in Iraq's Anbar province, Saturday morning revealed the damage from the previous night's American airstrikes there. 85 targets hit, the Pentagon said, in a mission to retaliate for the deaths of 3 US soldiers a week ago. The Americans insist this is distinct from the latest attacks in Yemen, but of course it will not be seen that way by the other side. In the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, Sky News spoke to a leader from an influential militia group aligned to Iran.
We have said it before, in a clear and direct way, we don't accept threats. At the moment, if any members of the Islamic resistance in Iraq are targeted, or any jihadi or resistance fighter from any part of the resistance forces are targeted, there will be retaliation from us. We do not accept or acquiesce to the violation of Iraqi sovereignty.
The danger of attempting to deter militias with force is clear. There are 2,500 American troops in Iraq in bases like this in Erbil, here to counter the enduring threat from ISIS. Attacks by Iranian-backed militia on these bases are common. If another American is killed, you can see how this spirals. The fact that images like this are now becoming routine should be alarming. The American and British militaries and their governments are engaged in a high-stakes battle to deter and to dominate.
Okay, so that was a little bit of information on it. So, can I get a reader for this slide?
prayer against enemies, a song, the Psalm of Asaph. God, do not keep silent. Do not be deaf, God. Do not be idle. See how your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you have acted arrogantly. They devise clever schemes against your people, and they conspire against your treasured ones. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation so that Israel's name will no longer be remembered. They have conspired with one mind, and they form an alliance against you. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebel, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Even Assyria has joined them. They lend their supports to the son of Lot. Selah.
Thank you for reading that. So this is Psalms 83 that tells us the who is coming into this war, and then Isaiah 63 tells us the reason why. It talks about the man coming from Basra who is treading the winepress alone. The winepress are these nations being crushed like grapes, and the man coming from Basra is Christ. So we're waiting for these events, and we're only talking about these things because they're so close to starting. And you can see God setting up the chessboard so that everybody is being dragged into this fight because of international commerce, because of the Houthis, because of international security, because of destabilization of the whole Middle East and the oil that's still there and dependent upon. So this is the best I can do. I have talked with Tanner Hawkins, who's just wonderful with prophecy. So these are the names in the left-hand column, and these are the best I can do for the modern day equivalent of those nations today. So the tents of Edom is southern Jordan, the Ishmaelites is Saudi Arabia, Moab is central Jordan, the Hagarenes, people always think, oh, that sounds like Hagar, so it must be Egypt. It's not. So please don't follow that line of thought. It's actually eastern Jordan. Gebal is Lebanon. That's where Hezbollah is, which we talked about this morning, is backed by, say it with me now, Iran. They always have since 1985 when they were chartered. Ammon is West Jordan, Amalek is southern Israel, and Philistia is Gaza. The inhabitants of Tyre is Lebanon, Assyria is Turkey and Syria, and part of Iraq. And then the children of Lot are Ammon and Edom are part of Jordan. So do you understand why it's not a global war? It's a localized war. That's why they always used to say proximal states. It's very confusing to most people. It's the countries right around Israel. And that's why it's defining who's going to be involved. And I'm like, all these people are already involved. We've been watching these newsreels about all the stuff that's happening, and all these countries are the ones who are involved. We just saw a film clip about Iraq, Iran, Jordan, as well as the rest of these. So in the end, it's going to be like this. So I do want to give us some hope. These are the horizontal lines. So basically the way you can always, well, the way I always try to remember it is either 9:30 or what have you, but it's the Euphrates is your left arm, the right arm pointing down is the Nile. That whole area is promised to Israel. So, and this is the borders, I'm not gonna read it, but it starts at the top with Dan and ends at the bottom with Gad. In the middle is the where the temple's going to be. Yes, Perry?
In Zechariah 12, it gives us a little bit of a hint of this coming war that you're talking about too, in that it says, Zechariah 12 verse 2, behold, I'll make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, as opposed to like all nations. So the people round about, which is all those enemies that they have on every side, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and Jerusalem. In that day I'll make Jerusalem a burdensome stone.
I love that because Joel 3 picks up on the same thing. And what I love about Zechariah 12 too is when they finally meet Christ and they were like, you are the Messiah. And what's interesting about the end of that chapter, it's the inverse of the Passover. So in the Passover, the Jews were putting the blood, the lintel, over their lintel and side posts so that the angel of death would pass over them, right? So their firstborn wouldn't die. what's going to happen in Zechariah 12, it says they're all going to weep and mourn for a lost firstborn son. And that is what Zechariah 12 ends in, and it says specifically it's going to be done family by family, tribe by tribe, which is exactly how it was done in Egypt by the Jews. It was family by family that they were safe from the death of the firstborn, but Zechariah 12 is the inverse of that. So God is always ruling in the kingdoms of men, and we have that in Daniel and Jeremiah and in Romans. Can I get a reader for this slide? Go ahead.
Daniel 2:21, he changes times and seasons, deposes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who are understanding. Daniel 4:17, this sentence is by the decree of the angelic watchers, and the decision is a command of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High is ruler over the realm of mankind, and bestows it on whom he wishes, and sets over it the lowliest of men. Jeremiah 27:5, by my great power and outstretched arm, I made the earth and the men and beasts on the face of it, and I give it to whom I please. Romans 9:7, and for the scripture says to Pharaoh, I have raised you up for the very purpose of showing my power in you, so that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth. And in verse 18, so then he has mercy on whomever he chooses, and he hardens the heart of whomever he chooses.
Great. Is this the latest version? Because I don't think it is. I know they always have the same date on them, but there is an update because this doesn't have any of the in there stuff. So this was, if you can check, I'm going to just read some other things right now. So the other one I wanted to read to today, if we can, is Isaiah 63, so we can put all the pieces together for this particular event that's coming. Can I get a volunteer reader for Isaiah 63?
The full chapter, Joe?
How about, let's see, through verse 6.
Okay. Who is this who comes from Edom in crimson garments from Basra? He who is splendid in his apparel, marching in the greatness of his strength. It is I, speaking in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is your apparel red and your garments like his who treads the winepress? I've trodden the winepress alone, and from the peoples no one was with me. I trod them in my anger, and I trampled them in my wrath. Their lifeblood spattered on my garments and stained all my apparel. For the day of vengeance was in my heart, and my year of redemption had come. I looked, but there was no one to help. I was appalled, but there was no one to uphold. So my own arm brought me salvation, and my wrath upheld me. I trampled down the peoples in my anger, made them drunk in my wrath, and I poured out their lifeblood on the earth.
Thank you. Yep. So it tells us, and this is what's interesting, he's coming to tread the winepress. He does it alone, and he tramples them in his anger because of what they've done to his people. So it's also interesting because he does it alone, and he crushes the nations with his anger and makes them drunk with his wrath. So if we compare this, let's go to Joel 3 now. You'll see the same kind of language used here. And let's read, I think it's pretty short. It's through verse 1 through 16. Can I get a volunteer? There we go. So thank you.
For behold, in those days, and in that time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold for a girl for wine, that they might drink. Yea, and what have ye done to do with me, O Tyre and Sidon, and all the coast of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head. Because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried unto your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place where ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabeans, to a people far off, for the Lord hath spoken it.
Proclaim this among the nations, consecrate for war, stir up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am a warrior. Hasten and come, all your surrounding nations, and gather yourselves there. Bring down your warriors, O Lord. O let the nations stir themselves up, and come up the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I will sit to judge all the surrounding nations. Put in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Go in, tread, for the winepress is full. The vats overflow, for their evil is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon are darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. The Lord roars from Zion, and utters his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth quake. But the Lord is a refuge to his people, a stronghold to the people of Israel. So shall you know that I am the Lord your God, who dwells in Zion, my holy mountain. And Jerusalem shall be holy, and strangers shall never again pass through it. And in that day the mountains shall drip sweet wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and the stream beds of Judah will flow with water. And fountains shall come forth of the house of the Lord, and the water of the valley of Shittim. Egypt shall become a desolation, and Edom a desolate wilderness, for the violence done to the people of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. But Judah shall be inhabited forever, and Jerusalem to all generations. I will avenge their blood. I have not avenged, for the Lord dwells in Zion.
So the location, there's like about 7 things for any battle that you want to be able to nail down. So if I'm Romanian and I'm coming to America and somebody says, oh, the Civil War, I might think it's one big battle, right? If I'm from another country, I wouldn't know. So what's important to tell about a war, especially a future war like these other ones, is the location. So this one tells us in verse 12, the location is the Valley of Jehoshaphat. It's the same one that happened for King Jehoshaphat. When they marched out, they sang a song, and what did they find when they got to where they were going to fight their enemies? Everybody was dead. 3 days of spoil, of bringing all that back into the country. So the location is one thing. What the conditions are before the war, what the conditions are after the war, who is fighting who, and what is the result of the war. I know this is boring stuff, and it sounds like, oh, who cares? But I'm like, you can't identify future wars if you don't separate those things out. What happens in Bible prophecy is everybody takes anything in the future about war and pushes it all together like a Big Mac and thinks it's fine to just gobble it down. And I'm like, no, it's not the same war. It's going to start at God's sanctuary and go out from there. How do we know this? Because it's always happened that way. Ezekiel 9 is a great example of that. He says, go and mark all the people who mourn over the detestable things going on in the land, and put the last character of the Hebrew alphabet on them, Taw. Then he sends in 6 deadly henchmen, and they go and kill anybody who doesn't have the mark, starting at the sanctuary going out. So that's Ezekiel 9, and I think that has a great bearing on this. In some way, Iran is going to have to be dealt with in all of this. They are the ones who are funding the Houthi down in Yemen. They're funding Hezbollah. They have helped Hamas. They're behind all of this. And I think there's a couple things we can look for. One is the dissolution probably of all the Abraham Accords with all the countries that just got set up. Number 2, I think the other thing to look for is an accident with the Houthis and the shipping. I think something really dangerous and stupid might happen where they accidentally hit a ship that will stop the ships going through the Suez completely, because they've made mistakes before, and all they have to do is either hit the wrong ship or hit a ship too close to the Suez, and you're going to have a blockade of international shipping for a little while. I'm sure they'll clean it up. But I think it was last year or the year before, one ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. How long did that take to clean up? It was 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, it was a big mess, and everybody was like waiting in the Mediterranean or waiting in the Indian Ocean to get through while that cleanup was going on. So what I want to just sort of focus on at the last part of this is that Iran is constantly threatening Israel. I think I've showed this once before. It's hard to see from your seats, but this is the friendship chart of the Middle East, and where there's red, they're enemies. Where there's yellow, it's still filled with tension, and where there's green, they're friends. So across at the top column is Al-Qaeda, then Egypt, then Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Iraq, ISIS, Israel, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, and the United States. So you can see how unstable it is all the way across. All right. And in the meantime, what people haven't kept their eye on is what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. I think we'll stop. I don't know if I've played this one or not. I'm gonna stop it because I think we're out of time. Let's see.
But Joseph, I don't know if you heard this or not, but this morning on the radio, they said that the 6-week truce they're trying to get in the war, Israel has agreed to it. Hamas has not. I expect that Hamas will want some conditions that Israel can't live with, but that's where it stands right now.
Yeah, it's all been called off, and also after the humanitarian aid came to the Gaza Strip and there was that stampede and 7 people died, Hamas killed several more of the captives that they've had since October the 7th. So now the prisoner exchange is completely off the table. And I don't know what's going to happen. So,
According to this morning, that Hamas would release the sick and the vulnerable, they call them, as part of this deal.
They're sick and vulnerable?
The sick ones, they're sick captives, and the vulnerable, the old captives, that's part of the agreement, but Hamas hasn't agreed to it yet.
Okay. Well, we'll stop there, but we're done, and you're doing Sunday school from here on out, right? Okay. Well, thank you all for your time, and